convenient. But we're live
Yeah,
now. Some people are joining us. Do you
cool.
see the counter actually? Do you see on your screen a counter of how many people pop
I
in
see
at all?
I see 16 right now,
Oh
and
yeah,
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 cool.
I'm seeing names. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. So this is the first time you've done a Substack live, right?
Yeah, yeah. No
Oh,
one's no
cool. Yeah,
one's no one's plugged me before, so I'm ready
yeah,
for it.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Brain Milk. I'm Des McIntyre, of course. I'm here with Zach Custer. You write second-rate cities, which I really, really like. You got a little bit of a hobby mission traveling to different U.S. cities, and you do actually like really good in-depth travel guides, reports. Like, how do you refer to it when you tell people, like when you pitch what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of am trying to fill a void that I wanted in travel writing that I wasn't getting. So I really like off the beaten path cities, and I feel like everyone's writing about the new bougie restaurant in
Yeah.
LA
Right.
or New York or whatever. And I was like, it actually started when I was living in New York, and I started taking these trips to Buffalo and Detroit and stuff, and I was like, "These cities are amazing.
Yeah.
I wanna learn more about them," and I couldn't find a lot on them, so eventually I was just like, "I guess I'm the person that has to fill that void." So,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's kinda the idea, and yeah, like, I try to do, like, a power weekend in each city, and the sort of goal I would say is that, like, if you've never been there, you get a pretty good sense of the vibe as opposed to just, like, a couple places to hit. You get, like, a real feeling of the people in the city, and
Right.
then I think for locals, my hope is that they get a sense of like what an outsider might see their city as, for better or worse too. So yeah, that's kind of the
Yeah.
goal.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you seem to specialize a lot in dive bars. You really get into the kind of drinking culture of a lot of these cities. So that's always
Yes.
fun. I myself I travel a lot for my job. I don't want to talk about the actual company I work for, but I travel a lot. I'm always like downtown in all these cities, and so like I really compared to the rest of the team that stays in and like Uber Eats everything. I'm like I want to go out
Yeah.
and see everything. I'm like a huge like urban explorer. And I really like what you do because you kind of go deep into like the history of the cities. It seems like you try to go out of your way to start a lot of conversations with like Uber drivers and bartenders and things like that. So,
Yeah.
uh, what is that? Are you just really extroverted? Do you go like out of your comfort zone to kind of get those vibes, or what's your kind of go to shtick for it?
Yeah, I'm definitely not that extroverted, so it requires like some work on my end, but I think that's like sort of the fun of traveling solo, but also like telling myself I'm going to write about it afterwards. I'm like, if I don't like
Yeah,
make connections now, then I'm not going to have anything to write about. So it
right.
really forces my hand a little bit. And then, yeah, the more you do it, you just realize, like, especially in these cities, what I find is like when you tell them, like, hey, I'm in Cincinnati to like experience Cincinnati, people are like, what the fuck? Like, you came to
Yeah,
Cincinnati, and they just want to tell
right.
you everything and like want to take your hand and show you around. So, like, I just kind of run with that idea that most people are wanting to show off their city and haven't gotten the chance to do so.
Yeah. Do you plan a lot, or do you kind of just go by the seat of your pants and get a lot of recommendations? Like, are you like, Anthony Bourdain has the idea that you should just never have any plans and just see where you end up, which, if it's your first time, you probably don't always want to do that because there's a lot of like
Right.
classic things you kind of have to do, see the big tourist destinations at first. But what's your planning process?
Yeah, I feel like I'm a planner that builds in a ton of flexibility. So
Yeah.
I want to know the things that might interest me in any neighborhood I'm in. So I can pop around and see things, but I'm also like a big believer in like if I'm having a good time, not to leave that good time.
Yeah.
There's been a
Yeah.
few
Right.
instances where I've done that. Like I was like having like the time of my life, and I was like, but I have to go check these other boxes, and admittedly
Yeah.
those were not nearly as fun as what I was already doing. And so yeah, I think we briefly talked about this, but like Google Maps,
Yeah.
huge for
Yeah.
me. Like I just put flags everywhere, so
Oh
that
yeah.
way
Yeah.
like
Me
I can
too.
have like a single maybe destination in a neighborhood or part of a city, and then once I hit that, I can just like look at my map and I'm like, okay, I've got like 20 other things that might be interesting around here and just pop around. But yeah, tons of that. I think Reddit is sort of your best friend if you're traveling somewhere new. Like
Oh yeah.
it's
Getting
like the
people's
bet.
recommendations. Yeah.
Yeah, if you just type in this city thing you want, Reddit, like you will get
Yeah.
so much information from locals and it's great. And then of course, like I would say everyone in the service industry is like your best friend when
Oh yeah,
traveling.
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah, and then on
yeah.
Reddit, I always enjoy when they start arguing with each other. Like, there's just
Yeah.
like long subreddit kind of like threads where people are just like bitching and arguing with each other about like what is good and isn't good and things like that. That's
Yes.
always fun.
Yes. I'm
Yeah.
always looking at dive bars and there's always a fight about what is a dive bar. And it's a constant, no matter
Yeah,
what
right,
city you're
right.
looking at. Yeah.
Yeah. And all your articles, you have a lot of photography. Is that like a hobby of yours, or you just use an iPhone like photos or things like that? Like, is that like a big focus of what you do, or is it just kind of complementary? Like,
Um,
how do you see the way photography interacts with your travel guides?
I mean, I think it's important. I like taking the pictures. It is just my iPhone. I think I would love to like upgrade to have a film camera that I could do at some
Yeah.
point, but I haven't done that. But yeah, I think the pictures are helpful for me in my writing just to like reference. But then I think it's like fun to show just like how beautiful like all of these different cities are, whether you're like photographing like urban decay or like a
Yeah,
beautiful
right.
West Texas
Yeah.
sunset. Like I think they're both like gorgeous, so it's fun to do that.
Yeah. Speaking of urban decay, I think the article that I found you on was you wrote on like about St. Louis like many months ago, and like I'm from St. Louis. Your dad's from St. Louis. You got some family experience there. You used to go there as a kid.
Yeah.
What was it like going back to St. Louis like so many years later and kind of re-experiencing it, and especially once you have like more money and like I guess free time to go around and check out all the bars and everything.
Yeah, that was an interesting city for me. I think candidly, I did a bad job planning that one because I was
Yeah.
there. I think I was there like a Saturday to a Tuesday or something. And St. Louis, at least from the locals that I spoke to, it's like notoriously if you're not there like on the weekend, it's a pretty dead city, and that's
Hmm.
a lot of what I experienced. But um, it's a cool place just because Missouri is so weird. You're like, is this the South? Is this the Midwest? It
Yeah.
like
Right.
feels like a bunch of things converging. And then yeah, I mean, I think it's I think it's had the maybe it's one and two with Detroit as far as like the greatest like population decline over the past like 50
Yeah.
years in the United
Yeah.
States. So like you can feel that viscerally. It's like around
Yeah,
you and
yeah.
it's really interesting, but I think it's like gorgeous architecture. I think the Gateway Arch is like something everyone should see.
Yeah,
I
right.
think I
Of
think it's
course.
like actually like an incredible monument and like it's totally worth going out of your way to see. And I don't feel that way about a lot of like sort of touristy attractions, but I do think it's
Yeah,
totally and it's unique, like nothing else like it
right.
in the world. So yeah,
That
I think
that's a good point actually, because sometimes it's like underwhelming when you go to like you have to see this destination and it's just like not that interesting, but it's
yeah.
just pretty unique. You wrote talk about how it's actually the only man-made national park, which is kind of interesting. It's not like Yellowstone or any giant
Yeah.
forest or anything like that. Like it's literally a man-made structure, but for whatever fluke of how they got the congressional funding, it went through the federal park system. So it is kind of
Yeah.
a unique case there.
Yeah, and yeah, you'll like see a park ranger walking around and it's yeah, it's a cool place. And you can like frame it up so you have like the skyline right behind it. It's worth a visit for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely a beautiful spot in the city. Anytime you're getting close, you can see the arch like up in the horizon. Like when you're rounding a bend of the highway and you're kind of getting close to downtown, which is kind of cool. And
Yeah.
you're talking about like the kind of urban decay. And like St. Louis is like Detroit, and obviously a lot of like Rust Belt manufacturing decline. But it's kind of interesting because I grew up in like the St. Louis area, and I moved there after college, living kind of in South City, which I really, really loved. But it's funny because I
Okay.
travel so much with other people, and like St. Louis with like the crime rate and the abandoned buildings and like just giant parking lots everywhere. Like I understand why, like the friends on my team that like we travel with when we go to St. Louis to work something, they're like, yeah, I don't really feel safe or sketchy here. And it's like any other city that we go to, people are like, oh, I
Yeah.
don't know about this. And it's always like, I'm from St. Louis. Everywhere feels safe and welcoming. And, I don't know. It's an interesting vibe being used to that and coming from there. Cause even like, Deep Ellum in Dallas, Texas or something like kind of notorious for some like good nightlife but also some crime, but like I don't know, it's just not out of the ordinary for me. So it's kind of a weird thing to be thankful for in a way, but like
Yeah.
there's a famous like news article where some guy was in Seattle vacationing from St. Louis and like some guy was trying to mug him and he says it made like national headlines of just he goes like, bitch, I'm from St. Louis, you can't rob me, and he like beat the guy or something. It's just like that seems like a quintessential St. Louis thing.
That's
But
fantastic.
yeah. And while we're on St. Louis, like you had a great quote, and like anybody watching, I really recommend you check out Second Rate Cities and read his guides because you have like a poetic way that you talk about things, and you do have like a good critical eye for the things you say. But you have this quote about St. Louis, the ride from the city on I-70 and I-44. Big highways in St. Louis that made it feel a little left behind. These freeways were old and beaten with lanes that felt too small for the speed limits. And you noted the reckless driving, which always cracks me up because, yeah, it's like the Wild West in St. Louis, like, which is nice because, like, the police
Yeah.
here have real crimes to, like, they're not just sitting on the highways giving out traffic tickets all day. But, like, it is funny because, like, especially
Yeah.
like there's a highway 270 where if you're like north of Highway 70 on the north side of St. Louis, which is kind of like the red line. St. Louis has a lot of historical issues with like white flight and red zoning and things like that. The Highway
Yep.
270 north of 70, it's just like literally the speed limits are not even a suggestion. Like everyone's just like flying
Yeah.
past you, and it always cracks me up. But it was funny that you noted that.
I mean, it was
Uh,
it
uh,
was instant, like out of the airport into a car. It was like, this is
yeah,
reckless.
yeah, yeah,
Reckless. Yeah.
right. And speaking of the airport, like a lot of cities have like pretty good transit, but St. Louis is like held back because the St. Louis is like still divided by the county and the city. And so the
Mhm.
city in like the 1870s split off from the county and then decided they didn't want to have to pay for like the taxes and all the streets and all the maintenance of all the suburb or like the rest of St. Louis County. So the city is actually split off, which is kind of what gives us like higher crime statistics than we really deserve because most cities are using the
Interesting.
metropolitan
Mm.
numbers, whereas our city is a very small chunk of the kind of metropolitan area. And it's one thing that's like really sad where I always think about like if I ever ran for office or anything like that, got involved in like local politics, I would be like the single issue campaigner of just like, meld the county with the city again. Cause like Nashville has done that. A lot of cities have done that. And then it's great for the whole region because St. Louis is like notorious for like fragmented,
Yeah.
like little cities and towns that have their own police forces, their own school districts. And it's like a lot of redundant, wasted money for the same services that could just be handled by like
Yeah.
one. But it's like a weird thing where the county now doesn't, it was the city that split off to screw over the county, but now the county has more people and has more money and doesn't want to pay for like the crime. And then like speaking of like Metrolink, which started off my tangent here, but like the county and then like St. Charles and some of the suburbs over, like they don't want to have any transit that goes from the city to like some of the suburbs because they're worried about criminals take. Yeah, it's like a big mess. but
Yeah.
but it's funny that like my friends when we do like a St. Louis event or whatever, they're like, oh yeah, I took the Amtrak, like the light rail from the airport to downtown, and oh that was an experience. And this is kind of funny, like a little bit of that vibe. But
Yeah.
you hit
Yeah.
some good places. You went to Budweiser. You hit Cherokee Street, off Broadway, Lafayette Park, the Loop, which is one of the, like the coolest streets in America.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned toasted ravioli, which you
Yeah.
recommended that like every place should have that as an appetizer. And St. Louis
Yeah.
has a lot of weird. I'm doing the thing that you were talking about, like people who are local can like just spout off
Yeah.
nonstop
Yeah.
about their
I
city
love
and
it.
things like that. But for anyone who doesn't know, toasted ravioli is ravioli, but fried to like a golden brown and then served with marinara sauce. And it's huge in St. Louis. And I don't know, we grew up eating it everywhere, but it's
Yeah.
funny that you have that like culinary touch. But
Yeah.
how much
It's
how much
it's
does
like
like the
a Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No. You go ahead. I'm talking too much, probably.
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, I feel like the toasted ravioli is just like a better version of mozzarella sticks, for lack of a better
Oh
term. If
yeah,
you've
yeah,
never had it, like,
right.
they're fantastic, though. Yeah, they should be everywhere.
Yeah, St. Louis is also interestingly where the ice cream cone was invented.
Oh,
In the World's Fair in 1904, we had the World's Fair and the Olympics in St. Louis. Which St. Louis,
oh,
you touched this on some of your other articles about like the kind of like white flight and the Rust Belt decline, where like a lot of cities that were used to be really beautiful, but like a big thing is like highways. When they started building highways everywhere, they kind of gutted a lot of cities, and like most,
yeah,
especially like Rust Belt cities. Like you look at photos of like Buffalo, New York, or Cincinnati in like the 1890s, and it's basically like Europe, just like tall, or like almost like Manhattan, where it's like a lot of giant streets with big buildings and tons of housing. But then they tore it all up to build these highways. They ringed around the downtowns and kind of like choked them off, so you didn't have any foot traffic anymore. And
yeah.
it's almost like criminal when you see maps of what cities used to look like. Buffalo, New York is a big one. Have you been to Buffalo, by the way?
I have, yeah,
I,
yeah, and what you're talking about is I always try to get a sense of, like, the demographics, like, population decline or
yeah,
increase when I go to these cities, and most of the second-rate cities that I go to, quote, unquote, usually have, like, a population decline, but to your point, if you're looking at, like, the greater metropolitan area,
right.
most of them are still actually, like, growing cities if you count in the suburbs and
Yeah,
everything.
right.
So it's just weird. Everything becomes like this donut where the center has just been totally
Yeah,
emptied out, and then it's
right,
like
right.
super populated on the fringes, which is like my personal nightmare. I would never, I hate the suburbs. So like, I just can't
Mhm.
believe that that's like such a phenomenon that like people want that and they just want to have this decaying like urban center. It makes no sense to me. And yeah, it's just
Right.
bizarre. And it's like
Well,
very
kind of
much
like
the American way.
yeah, no kidding. Yeah. I just read an article about this. It was talking about how like trolleys in America used to be a huge deal. And St. Louis actually was like the trolley capital of America, where they just had trolleys going everywhere. You could get on a trolley, go anywhere you wanted to. But then it was like
Interesting.
GM and like some of these automobile related companies basically lobbied the government to kill all these trolley systems in like the 1950s. And a lot of cities actually had like new trolley systems. So they were like kind of brand new and like just developed. But then GM and all these companies, they took over all of the bus companies and then lobbied the government to do only busing so that they would buy tires, use oil, buy like essentially buses. And then basically it killed their competitors, which were like, trolleys or subways or other mass transit systems. And they went with
Yeah.
buses for obviously kind of corrupt reason, which is just sad. I think that's like my biggest, you go to Europe and you can go anywhere on transit.
Yeah.
You're like rich as a transit, but then in so many American cities, and like St. Louis is a great example where you just have to have a car. You're not getting around anywhere if you don't have a car.
Yeah, yeah, and then on top of that, like, I'm fine to ride the bus, but in so many cities, like, the bus system sucks too, so it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
if you're
right.
gonna if you're gonna do that, at least try to make it,
Yeah,
well-oiled machine, but yeah, I guess, yeah, corruption, so
yeah. I was just in Chicago like a couple weeks ago, and I got on the bus, and this lady gets on and just starts screaming about how the government lobotomized her. She kept screaming, "I am not a trans man," and like just fighting demons in her head, but just like ranting. And then stood in the doorway of the bus, and like the bus driver was really patient, like waiting like 30 seconds while she's ranting. But then he's like, "All right, you got to get off now. I got to go. I got stops to go." But it was just weird just hearing a lady just scream about lobotomies. And then she
Yeah,
kept yelling out, "It doesn't matter. I'm an adult woman. I can have, I think she said, I can have recreational sex. It's not a big deal." Just like, screaming to herself. It's always,
nice, yeah.
sometimes with the transit, you definitely, you get whoever walks on board.
Yeah, it's good though, it's good, I think everyone needs a little bit of that flavor here and there. It's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a good antidote to the suburbs.
Yeah, right. What are your favorite cities? Like, what is your criteria for what cities you choose to do reports on? How do you go about choosing where you go?
Yeah, I mean, so first, like second-rate cities is like meant to be tongue in cheek because I like love these places, and it's really just that they're like overlooked. So anything kind of fits if it's just not a place people would consider a destination or like a vacation spot.
Right.
So it's a pretty broad scope, but I also, the last place I went was El Paso, which is an exception to this rule, but typically a place that has population decline is kind of like
Yeah,
a
right.
highlight for me. Like, why are people leaving? What's going on there is really interesting to me. But yeah, it's really just like, the classic like flyover states and stuff like that. Like, why don't people go here? I feel like most people have an opinion about Detroit, but how many people have actually spent time in Detroit? So that's kind of the
Right,
criteria,
right.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of a big thing. You hear about that a lot in politics about how, like, people are afraid of cities and people just say, like, if you go to New York or Chicago, you're going to get robbed and murdered. And there's, people tell me when I travel, like, you went that city. But it's like you
Yeah,
go to those places and it's like I'm in downtowns of like every major city for like the last 7 years that I've been doing this traveling job. And like, I've never been robbed, knock on wood, I guess. But like, there's good
yeah,
places everywhere you go. I don't know. People have this idea and it gets into a weird like political culture war thing of like cities, who's real America, and like
yep,
the cities are overrun with crime and all of this stuff. But it's a lot of cities that have bad reputations still have a lot of people living there that have great things going on, great architecture, great museums and whatnot. But and
totally,
that always
totally.
it always pains me though. But it's the kind of thing. It's like people that don't travel and don't feel, I guess, intellectually curious about other places and don't want to go experience other places. I feel like you're just kind of writing off a lot of cool experiences. Like everywhere you go, you seem like you're having pretty good adventures,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And I mean, yeah, if like you only know about a city when it makes headlines, headlines are usually bad, right? Like if you
Yeah.
only know about a city when it's like
If it bleeds, it leads, right?
yeah, so it's like yeah, if that's your only context, you'll probably think bad things like I don't know, again, El Paso, I was just there and I think in my head I thought it was probably like a high crime rate just being a border city. It's one of the
Hmm.
safest cities in the United States and has had that record for like 2 decades now. And
Yeah, right.
I
And it's right
was
across from Juarez, right?
yeah, and it like some of the friendliest people and I felt totally safe the whole time. There was never like me looking behind my yeah, it's like just it's a
Yeah,
family oriented, super friendly city, but I
right.
don't think most people realize that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess we can caveat that both of us are white males, so and I guess it's
Yes,
a little easier to travel around. I heard this
definitely.
comedian, what was her name? Something Tomlinson. I forget her name, but anyway, she was talking about
Taylor
she had this
Tomlinson.
bit. Yeah, yeah, Taylor. Yeah, she had this bit about how if she could have one day as a man, she wouldn't do anything sexual. She would just walk outside all day and not get harassed or like followed or have to worry about people like messing with her. And I guess that's a is a very valid idea. It's not the same traveling if
Yes.
you're like a good looking young woman or something. It's not as easy to just walk like aimlessly in any direction in a random city you don't live in, right?
Yes, definitely. I would not call myself intimidating, but I'm big enough that you would have to, like, think twice before just jumping me, and there's probably an easier target out there. So,
Yeah, right.
yes, I am
Exactly.
I am fortunate in that regard for sure.
Now, some of your travels, you do you often try to meet with other people? I know you were traveling with Jim Ward, who's a musician, right, in El Paso. A couple
Yeah.
others that you. It seemed like you were trying to meet up with people. Are these people that you know, or do you ever kind of cold call people and say, "Hey, you want to show me around" or anything like that?
Yeah, so I would say the first 5 or 6 posts I did, I was just winging it, and once I built a bit of a following, I was started using that as leverage to reach out to people. So like Jim Ward, super well known musician, was one of the founding members of At the Drive-In and now in Sparta. And he's just been like an El Paso guy through and through, like born and raised there, never left. And so yeah, I just reached out to like his management. I was like, I want to know like his perspective on a city
Nice.
that
Yeah.
he like. He's a guy that's had a pretty illustrious career. He could have easily gone to L.A., New York, done the big musician thing, and he stuck around. So yeah, I've gotten better about like trying to reach out to people that feel like they're kind of lifers in the city and get their perspective on it. I just think it like adds a lot of color and makes it more interesting for me and hopefully for the reader to just like get that extra perspective.
Right. I think that's always a really good thing. And there's a lot of cities that I feel like I've been to Paris and I just feel like I need to go back, Paris, France. Like I need to go back sometime with somebody who actually lives there. Cause I feel like, especially international cities, like any tourism area you go into, it's really
Yeah.
just like an international tourist zone. And you're not really getting like the local culture unless you like go several streets off the kind of like, beaten path of all the tourist spots and things like that. But
Yeah,
that
totally.
often helps.
I was in London actually for the first time last year, and someone that I met on Substack, shout out to Alex from Pub Vignettes. Like we had connected because we both are like big bar fans, and he lives outside of London. And when he found out I was going there, he like planned a whole bar crawl for me and took me to like
Oh,
six
nice.
six bars in London that like I would have never
Yeah,
found. I mean, that's a city of what, 10 million people. Like I would have never
right.
known about those bars. And it was like, yeah, it just totally changed the trip for me, So anytime you can find a local, I recommend it highly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you like what do you have travels coming up? Do you have a list of places you're trying to go or you kind of wing it based off of your like free time and availability? Are you kind of goal
Yeah.
oriented with the Substack?
I with the Substack, I want to usually try to hit 3 places a year, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it takes me a long time to write, and I have to do like
Right.
other vacation and like family
And
travel and
life.
stuff like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Turns out this does not pay the bills in any fashion. So
Yeah.
it actually just like drains my bank account. So
Right.
yeah, like three a year is like typically my goal, which is great. I'm going to Milwaukee in 2 or 3 weeks. So that's my
Nice.
next second rate
Have you been
city.
there before?
I did like 18 hours there after a work conference in Chicago.
Okay.
So I have been, but for all intents and purposes, it'll be like pretty fresh and new for me. Yeah.
Nice. And when are you going to that? Is it still in the
Uh,
summer?
yeah, it'll be like end of July.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
They have the beachfront is really cool there, and they have like I think like just all summer they have a festival. I forget what it's called, but they have like really big music acts like all summer long. I think it's like technically the biggest music festival in the world or something, but it's because it's spread out like every weekend over a month or 2 months or something like that.
Yeah,
So check that out. See
Summerfest.
if any of Summerfest. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
If you haven't already
Yeah,
looked that up, there might be some overlap or something that you could check out.
I think that's all of June. But I will say one of my like weird quirks with this travel is I actually
Oh
try to
yeah.
avoid the
Okay.
like the big events just because I
Yeah.
think it like detracts from what the place actually is.
Yeah,
Like
that's a good call.
if I were to go there for Summerfest, I think I would just be like rose tinted glasses from Summerfest. And I'd be like,
Yeah.
Milwaukee's cool because I saw all these
Yeah,
big
right.
bands that have nothing to do with Milwaukee.
Yeah,
So I usually try to pick a random weekend that like is hopefully lively, but not like distracted by something that big. But yes, I
right.
did look at the lineup and I was like, shit, I kind of want to go to this. But yeah,
Yeah.
next year maybe.
Uh, how much do you write when you're traveling? Are you like Jack Kerouac, just with like a little notebook, constantly taking notes, or do you just take photos and kind of do it from memory later? What's your writing process?
Um, Lots of photos. I take quite a bit of notes. Definitely, like as we touched on earlier, there's a fair amount of drinking that goes on during my travels. So
Yeah, yeah, right.
if I'm having like an interesting conversation with a stranger, I am like either immediately like brain dumping notes after that conversation or trying to
Mhm.
like act like I'm playing on my phone and take notes like actively
Yeah,
during or else I just won't remember all like the
right.
juicy bits. So I'm doing that and then but no like actual writing during the trip. The trip is all like getting the experience and then it usually takes me like a week or two after to even start writing because I feel like I'm still trying to digest the
Yeah,
place
right.
and, like, kind of figure it out. I don't wanna, like, force an opinion on the page. I want it to kinda, like, settle with me,
Yeah,
and it
right.
usually does change, with a little bit of time. So, yeah.
Do you do a
Yeah,
lot of research, like, as you're writing it, and does that kinda influence you at all? Or do you do a lot of research beforehand? Like, you mentioned you spent a lot of time on Google Maps and everything.
yeah, I would say a good amount of research before and after. So before just like getting context, so, like talking about some of these like Rust Belt cities, like understanding the main
Right.
industry that was there, sort of when it
Yeah.
collapsed, why people
Right.
left, just so I have that context. And then during the actual writing process after I've done the travel, you start connecting some dots and you're like, why is that? And then that leads to more research where you're like, oh, there's like a whole history that, you know, connects A and B together, and that's why like
Right.
you feel this certain vibe here and there. And so yeah, it's a mix of learning all that stuff throughout the process, I think.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time reading Wikipedia just in general, but
Mhm.
like especially when I travel, like I'll just go to like the city page and just read up the history and
Totally.
just kind of digest. And then I'm a total nerd when I'm walking around my friends and pointing out like the statues of like who that guy actually is because I just read about it on Wikipedia or something, or like that famous building. I know exactly what year it got built and like why it's architecturally unique or interesting or ahead of its time or something like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's like if you're not doing that, I feel like you're traveling wrong because, like, otherwise you're just blowing by everything and, like, to be able to
Right,
walk down a street you've never been on and be like, "That was the first building of XYZ," like, that's amazing to, like, be able to, like,
right.
point those types of things out and know that. Yeah, but I think there was some building in St. Louis that I mentioned actually that was, like, for a long time, it was considered the first skyscraper. It was only,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Uh huh.
10 stories tall, and it's, like, a
Right.
building you would just walk by and be like,
Yeah.
"Whatever," but, like, there's actually some cool history with that building.
Yeah. Yeah, I forget the name of it, but I know exactly what you're talking about, but it's like a giant square, and it was like yeah, I think you mentioned it was like one of the first steel it was like the first proven concepts of, like, steel
Yeah,
girders or something like that, and,
yeah,
like, now it's, like, not that interesting, but probably, in, like, 1920 or whatever, it totally slapped, you know?
yeah,
Probably, yeah,
exactly.
probably was a big deal.
Yeah, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, it is cool to, like, see that and, like, know that, and yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I have like I just like I guess I don't know if it's needless or useless knowledge or whatever, but like I just have like a little bit of a encyclopedic mind, and like history was always my best subject in school. So like I just like filling in all the gaps of all the things I don't know, and then traveling. Like I like to. I don't know if I mentioned it before or during this talk, but like I'm the kind of person that will walk like 30,000 steps, and I will literally just like walk out my hotel and just literally walk up and down every street or walk like, a mile and a half in one direction. Just it's amazing like the things you find if you like actually just kind of look around at everything, read every sign, look at all the buildings
Yeah,
and like just the history you kind of pick up just from just literally looking around and like, like in some places like Philadelphia or Boston, there'll be like little plaques on random buildings of like George Washington used to have dinner parties here in like the
yeah,
1770s or something like that. It's like, oh, interesting to know, and like
yeah,
I
yeah,
never would have thought twice about this building, but it's kind of nice when it's like kind of stopping and smelling the roses, but stopping and just, like actually reading, especially like a lot of cities, if they have like a random sign up, like that, probably some historical group or something, some kind of like civic heritage foundation or charity or something, like put it up there. And it's just, I wish more cities would do that, honestly. Like I like when you go around and like buildings will have like what year they were built, like just so simple. But I wish
yeah.
more like I'm also a person though that like museums never have enough information for me. Like I think like art museums should be just filled with like almost looking cluttered, but that's not everybody, but something I
Yeah,
enjoy.
no, I've had a couple experiences like that come to mind. I was staying at an Airbnb in Cleveland and like just like literally a block away around the corner, there was just a plaque outside this house. It was like the birthplace of Vince Lombardi, like the Lombardi
Yeah, right.
trophy. And I was just like,
Uh,
all right, that's awesome. Like I didn't need that information, but I like it. And then I was on a run in Buffalo and I just ran by a tree and it was like, this is the oldest tree in Buffalo. And I was like, okay.
yeah. Shout out that tree. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll take that all
Uh,
day.
Are you like a museum person? Do you try to do like art museums, like botanical gardens? Like, what's your kind of go-to, I guess, like must-see spots in cities?
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, like I lean heavy on the bars and stuff. That's
Yeah.
just like a bit of my shtick, but I usually try to hit like an art museum or like, I don't know, when I was in Cincinnati, they have like a neon museum there, which is pretty rad. when I go to Milwaukee, when I was there for 18 hours, I went to their art museum. It's freaking incredible.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah, right on the
Yeah,
lake and like
it's
weird kind of modern semi not really cubist, but like just I don't know, it's a weird blend of styles, but it is really cool.
yeah, yeah. So like I that's already on the list. Like that's definitely gonna happen. But um not yeah, it's definitely not like a must in every city I go to. I just kind of like go with the flow. I mean, I was in Cleveland
Yeah.
and I love rock and roll, so I went to the Rock and Roll
Oh,
Museum. I
right.
actually I
Yeah.
actually didn't like it very much, but yeah. Yeah, I try to hit what I can, hit some highlights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Milwaukee has the PBR, I guess, mansion. I think the PBR, the Pabst Blue Ribbon. That's maybe
Yeah.
a good vibe to go to if you're interested in that. But Milwaukee's got a great bar scene, like it's a great drinking town. And I find
Yeah.
like a lot of cities that have German populations, like St. Louis is very much that. But like, they all started breweries once all the German immigrants started coming here. And then, like I
Mhm.
think Wisconsin is like by far the biggest drinking state. It's
Yes,
like if you
yes.
look at a map of like most drinking, it'll be like cities and states that are like bright, for like big drinking, and then like Wisconsin is like the entire state, like per
Yeah.
capita, like the alcohol consumption is pretty impressive.
Yeah, the bar culture there looks insane, so I'm already bracing for that. I'm like, yeah, I think I'm gonna go off the rails a little bit there. We'll see what I need to like yeah, I need to front load with like the highbrow stuff so I can just be lowbrow the second half of the
Yeah,
trip.
right.
But we'll
Uh,
see.
Yeah. Do you like with the bar hopping, is that always like a good vibe? Does you just have better conversations once you're kind of like drinking and you get like the lowered inhibitions, I guess. And obviously bars are, people just kind of captive audiences just sitting at the bar, especially
Yeah.
like there's a lot of kind of like single people there just ready to talk to. And I like that kind of rapport you can kind of develop with people. You talk with the bartender, someone else jumps in, and before you
Yep.
know it, you've made friends. Yeah, you don't know their
Yeah.
names, but you're like kind of friendly with them.
Totally, yeah. I mean, I think there's that, like, barroom camaraderie. I think, the bar is also kind of the most socially acceptable place to, like, talk to a stranger. Like, there's
Yeah,
a
right.
lot of other public places where that would feel a little awkward, but at a bar, it's like everyone is sort of expecting that. And yeah, I like going to bars. I feel like that's always been sort of my third place. That's where, like, in my own neighborhood, that's like where I want to go out and like see people, and that's where I see most of my friends and stuff. So it just makes sense. And yeah, you'll meet better characters there than somewhere else. Like I'm as likely to meet like I don't know some well-to-do millionaire in a dive bar as I am like
Yeah,
just
right.
a total bum, and then someone that's just had like 30 different lives that they're willing to tell you about that you would never suspect. And yeah, I think you just get way more diversity there.
Yeah. Where do you stay? Do you mostly do hotels? Do you like hostels? Do you mix and match? You ever try to like meet people like from like college friends or old acquaintances and meet up back with them? What's your kind of like the homeliness aspect of your travels?
I usually do Airbnb or hotel. I don't do the hostel thing, not because I'm against it or dislike it, but these trips are like best for me to be done solo just because I am kind
Mhm.
of on a mission and like I know myself and I know my friends. If I'm hanging out with them, then suddenly I'm not sort of like reporting,
Yeah,
I'm not
right.
on yeah. So I think there's that aspect, and I think if I was staying at hostels and stuff, I would be interested in having fun with like other travelers, but then I wouldn't really learn about the place that I'm at. So I like to be a little more like laser focused and just like solo and just crushing it on my own.
Yeah,
It's just easier that way. Because I actually have done a few trips with friends, and it's just like I only scratched the surface, and I could have done so much more because it's just so easy to just kind of
right.
fall into your friend groove and do the easy
Yeah,
lazy
yeah.
thing and all of that. So
And then you got to kind of go at the pace of like the slowest person of
yes,
the group, kind of. Like when I travel with my wife, her vibe is not picking a direction and walking 5 miles. So it's like sometimes if I travel with her, it's like once she's done with the night, it's like, okay, I'll actually go walk for an hour. I'll see you in an hour and a half, and be back. I just I need to get my random
Yep,
exploring muscle a little worked out.
totally.
What with the kind of let's see, actually, real quick, you were talking about El Paso, and El Paso is like your most recent trip, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, your article on that is really, really good, and I have some quotes here I wanted to bring up because I just like the way you write, and you talk about how El Paso's heavily influenced and integrated with Mexican culture. It retains its U.S. framework, and that hearing Spanish, and then like how much Mexican culture is kind of like infused with American culture, and obviously being right by the border and everything. And you talk about how like Montana, some like I guess some Uber driver or somebody was telling you about how Montana means like mountain, and it's such an interesting like vibe shift. Here like that word just totally makes sense to a Spanish speaker, and it's interesting
yeah,
because El Paso, we talked about it a little bit before, is kind of like it's kind of in the crosshairs of like our political issues with like immigration
yeah,
and things like that. I know Beto O'Rourke was like a big time politician from El Paso, always talking it up, but like going
yep,
statewide, and then he ran for president. And so El Paso had a little bit of a vibe. But you talked about how it's kind of progressive. You write progressive thinking's born out of that makeup, but rather than performative, it feels strictly practical as a way to make the city viable for its population. Whatever virtue signaling or political gesturing you might find in other cities, it appeared entirely absent in El Paso. So kind of just like
yeah.
a legit city. Like the way you wrote that is really, really interesting. But you want to cook a little bit on like like virtue signaling or political gesturing of cities, and like which ones do that well or don't do that well?
I mean, I live in Portland, Oregon, so
Oh,
we're like top
virtue signaling.
we're
Yeah.
top of the mountain there, right? Which
Yeah.
like for the most part, I'm like all for all of the politics here in Portland, but sometimes I think like we're we're just like losing the plot a little bit, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
El Paso is just it really is just like our population is poor. There's a lot of immigrants. There's like tens of thousands of people that come over the border every day to work in El Paso and then go back, and it's just like it's progressive just because the city wouldn't function if you couldn't
Yeah.
serve all the people
Right. Right.
in that
Racism's
way.
not always profitable.
Yeah, so it's just like it's so obvious in my opinion, like and virtue signaling just wouldn't do anything there, right? Like the people would just
Right.
be like, "What are you what?" Like we're all on the same page here already. So it was kind of a breath of fresh air because it feels so progressive without trying to be. And I think because we're in this weird climate where everything has to be left or right, like when you're
Yeah.
just in a place that feels like you're, it feels like your politics without having to like explain it at every turn that like we're doing this because we're liberal and because we're fighting
Right.
this or whatever. Like there's no agenda. It's just kind of pure. And it was like very
Yeah.
nice. So I don't know if that
Yeah.
really explained it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting vibe, and I think right now with the World Cup, like all these people coming to America and all these random cities, and then
Yeah.
experiencing things like Costco, like free
Yeah.
refills at restaurants, and it's like getting a little bit of that like outside perspective of America from people who are not used to it and familiar with it. And I think
Yeah.
it's almost like good timing for the World Cup because like America has kind of been going through a lot, and there's unfortunately there's a lot of people that hate on America. Like a lot of Americans are kind of down on America. They think it's like a
Yeah.
colonialist, like hellhole, and obviously stuff with like Gaza, Palestine. There's a lot of like kind of cross wins, I guess. But like
Hmm.
at the end of the day, I like I'm very patriotic and I really like America, and it's nice that like especially traveling abroad a lot, like there's a lot of places that do things really well, but then you come home and it's also really relaxing that you don't have to haggle.
Yeah.
There's customer service and people care if a
Yeah.
company like screwed you over and like ruined your whoops. going haywire. If a company like screwed you over and like ruined all your luggage, like like in Europe, they don't give a shit. They're just like that
Yeah,
sucks. Like there are
yeah,
there are a lot of good things in America, but like with the World Cup timing has been really nice. Seeing like a almost like childlike wonder of the nice things about America from like these World Cup fans' eyes, from
yeah,
them going on their once in a lifetime kind of journey here. Have you been
totally.
watching the World Cup actually? By the way.
Yeah, I've been like deep in it. I love the World
Okay,
Cup,
nice.
and
Yeah.
but yeah, I agree. It's been like sort of unintentional great PR campaign for the US
Right.
when it really needs it. And it's cool to see these people like getting interviewed and talking about how much they love like Kansas City. It's not like they're just hanging out in New
Yeah.
York or LA.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, right.
if they're following a team, they are getting thrown into some random cities that they probably wouldn't go to, and it's awesome to
Yeah, right.
see. Um, yeah, so I love it, and I mean, I think that's you kind of hit it on the head, but that's like one of the things that I like to do with my writing is that like I too feel patriotic in a very non-political way, but I'm like
Right.
this country is the shit, taking into consideration it was like it's stolen land, built by slaves, things that I can't change, but
Yeah,
like
right.
the country that
Yeah,
I was born into is fucking rad. Like, and I
right.
feel like when people talk about like America sucks, I'm like, well, the politics are not fun right now, but like America is pretty amazing. I mean, we have so many subcultures. The landscape alone just like changes
Oh,
so
yeah.
much and changes like who you meet and how they operate within the world so
Right.
much. It's just, yeah, I think it's an incredible place. And yeah, it's so much more than the two coasts. And yeah, so much in between is just rad. Like, I love it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
um,
and I'm always intrigued by just cultural diffusion and like America being such a diverse place. And you kind of talk about this in El Paso, which is kind of interesting because, like there's a lot of like right now there's a big push on the right for like America needs to be a heritage country instead of like for our entire history, it's actually been like a creed country where all men are created equal. If you're a US citizen, like if you're born here, you're a citizen. You don't have to like
mhm,
trace your lineage back to like a 17th century village to like in France. Like a lot of people would say you're not French if you're, you don't have so many generations here. But like
right.
to me, it's like that is like the biggest strength of any country or any people is diversity and the cultural diffusion that you get. And so
Yep.
like, like in just talking about food, the way we have every culture's food here, like every city, like every major city has like a Greek town or a little Italy. And, those are
Mhm.
like and especially with like the kind of racism around immigration, it's ironic because like the in and out groups are always shifting as like one group gets accepted. So like in like the 1800s, like no one wanted Italians here, no one wanted Greeks here, but now they're
Right.
accepted as normal immigrants. And then like, right now the big thing is Hispanic immigration, but like if you look at like just geopolitical trends, like all immigrants in like 30 years are be coming from Africa, and these same Americans now bitching about Hispanics will be bitching about the Africans, saying, why can't they assimilate like the Hispanics did? It's always just
Yeah.
like a moving goalpost of racism, kind
Right.
of. And everyone's just like most amped about the group that is like the biggest group right now coming in. But like, the
Totally.
Chinese, built the railroads, and then we brought them here. We brought all the slaves here. And then like, El Paso is a great example where like literally just we bought a bunch of land and took a lot of land from Mexico in a war.
Yeah.
And so like these people who are already just living here, they went from like, Spanish to French to American. And it's like they didn't move. It's just the borders moved. So it's like America's a
Yeah.
white country. And it's like, but there's a lot of Hispanic people that just live here and have lived in here for, like 1,000 years or something. It's hard
Yeah.
to get your head around when you think about it like critically, I guess, or logically in a way.
Totally, totally. Yeah, I mean, with El Paso, like so many people kind of have dual lives there where they still have family in
Right.
Juarez on the other side, and like it's like, yeah, they live these in these two worlds, and both are great, and they like love both, and it's cool to see like there's like a real camaraderie between like the sister cities, and um, yeah, it just proves that like yeah, the border is just kind of this sort of made up thing that we made, and
Yeah.
the people on one side are very similar to the people on the other, and like we can all hang out.
Right. That especially on like the political standpoint, it's just like if you look at history, like every major world power was the place that like the money went and the power went because people wanted to move there. So like, in ancient
Yeah.
Athens, people wanted to be Athenian. In
Right.
Rome, everybody wanted to be a Roman citizen. In the British Empire, right? Everybody, even these people that are kind of being like exploited by Britain, they still liked the monarchy and wanted to be British subjects. And like, it's America's turn right now and has been for like the last like 100 or so years or whatever. And it's just like that is if you are the country that everyone wants to go to and make a life, and especially because America doesn't really provide that much in like safety net stuff, like
Right.
throughout our whole history, like people would come here with just the clothes on their back and they would like farm for 10 years. And it's always the thing. It's like Mexican immigrants now, where it's like, I am going to struggle so my kids can go to college and then they will become
Yeah.
doctors and then they will have kids who will write like gay fan fiction and be totally free to do anything. And then we've, officially made it or whatever. I just feel like that is the strength of a country. It's like, especially, now that populations are kind of declining in all industrialized countries, and it's becoming
Hmm.
like a bigger issue about our populations getting really old. Now, all of our money from the government is going to have to go toward, like Medicare-esque programs in whatever country. And so, like, the only thing that makes a country continue to thrive is immigration. And like traveling around the US, you go to places in Appalachia and some of the like, maybe the most like mega areas in the entire country, but on these like mining mountains that like the mine shut down 100 years ago, and like the one factory that was operating closed its doors in the 70s and moved overseas, and now like these people have literally nothing. Their kids have
Yeah.
no lives, and like the only new things is like a mosque or a Hispanic like restaurant or something like that. And it's like that is the future of your tiny town. It's like you have to have immigrants. Otherwise, like, your kids will never come back here. Your grandkids, there's no reason for them to come back to these towns.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, no notes on that. I agree fully.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That it's just always so frustrating to me. And especially too when you talk about like soft power and things like that. Cause it's like, America, like anyone who makes it in music or movies, they come here and now they bring like Korean, like K-pop to America, or they bring
Yeah.
their genres, they bring their food. And then that, diffuses with American stuff. And we make our own, even like sushi, like the kind of maki rolls are not real sushi. That's a kind of
Right.
a very American thing. And especially once you're jamming cream cheese into it and deep frying it, like that's not Japanese at all. Like they'd be like, get the fuck out of my sushi restaurant if you're ordering like a fried Philly roll or something like that. But like that is all because
Right.
people came here and just, again, it's like all strength comes from being the country that people want to go to. And I don't know, I wish more Americans would kind of think about that.
Yeah, yeah, we're definitely turning more people away, but yeah, to your earlier point, hopefully the World Cup is the PR campaign we need.
Yeah. Do you have any predictions, by the way, on the World Cup? Anybody you pulling for? Any team you really like?
I mean, I would hope everyone in the US is cheering for the US. I feel like that's
Yeah.
that's
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 pretty,
what you're
yeah.
supposed to do.
Right. Well, I don't think
So
we've
yeah.
made it this far in like 24 years or something like that. Like,
Yeah, 2002 was the last time we
yeah.
made it this far. So, yeah, I'm all in on the US until they're out. If they're out, hopefully they're not. Beyond that, I don't know. I mean, I've always been a big Argentina fan, but since they won the last World Cup, that makes it a little
Yeah.
a little hacky.
It would be badass though if Messi, retires with two World Cups
Yeah.
back to back.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool for him personally, I guess.
Yeah, it's totally possible, but yeah, I think hopefully we can get the US can get that red card from last night reviewed and they pull that back and we can have Balogun play. And then yeah,
Well,
sky's
yeah,
the
because
limit.
as of right now, he can't play the next game, right? With the red
He can,
card.
yeah, he cannot. But it seems like everyone's kind of in agreement that that red card was bullshit. So
Yeah.
it might get pulled back, but we'll see. I
I
don't
did see
really
an
know.
article. I was going to say I saw somewhere that there's no apparently there's no FIFA system or rule to like undo the call that got in the game that's already passed. So I
Oh
don't know.
really?
I don't
I
know if
thought
that's true or not, but
I think there's an appeals process, but that's the extent of my knowledge. I don't know what the
okay.
appeals process
Yeah.
would entail. But it seems like it's not just, you know, the US team that's pissed off. It seems like most people are like that was a totally bogus call. So
Yeah.
um
Well, it definitely seemed like an accidental foot stomping. You know, it
Yeah.
wasn't didn't look intentional at all. So the red card really was a bit of a bummer watching
Yeah.
that game.
But
I was
yeah,
impressed
either
they still managed to score a goal and still won despite being down a player for like the last like 20 something minutes or something like that.
yeah, I mean, I think even without him, I think we still have a good shot. It'll be a fun game. Belgium's a good team, so I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we got a chance against Belgium, but then who do we play after that? Do you know? Is it decided yet? I guess there's too many other games
I
to figure out who
think
the second from now game.
I think it's I don't know. I think whoever just won the Portugal Croatia game plays another team, and then whoever wins that is who we would play. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, that's not a very helpful answer.
Hopefully it's not France anytime soon. They're looking pretty dominating.
I don't.
France
I
is
Yeah, it might be Spain or Austria. Yeah, Spain beat Austria, so maybe that's the other one. I can't recall.
Gotcha. Well, some of your other cities that you mentioned, I just wanted to highlight real quick. Memphis, which you mentioned barbecue. Memphis got some good barbecue. You had
Yep.
some good lines about the Bass Pro Pyramid, where you describe it, and there's a quote from you. It's the most grotesque and American piece of architecture I've ever seen. It embodies the American dream and reality that everything should take up as much space as possible, and it should be built exclusively for those with cars. Which I kind of touched on that a little bit earlier, but that was a pretty astute. It is funny. It's like a giant pyramid that's a Bass Pro Shop, and then so much more because it's a giant ass pyramid. You know?
Yeah, yeah, they have like I mean, there's like waterways with giant fish in them. There's like a hotel on the top of it. Like it's insane. But as you would have done too, like I walked there, and you can see this big pyramid on the horizon. I was like, oh, it'll
Yeah,
be easy to walk there, and literally like 3/4 of a mile before you get there, like the parking lots start, and it's just this maze of parking
yeah, right.
lots, and like it's just crazy. Like there was no sidewalks for most of it. It's just like
Yeah,
totally anti-pedestrian. Like, of course,
yeah,
everyone has
right.
a car, and so
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like so many cities just rail against the pedestrian, and it just always drives
Oh,
me
yeah, yeah.
crazy.
Well, it's like so many bad things because it's obviously the pollution. Like so many pedestrians die. Like our
Yeah.
cars are so big, that like our trucks just keep getting bigger and bigger. And then you get
Yeah.
the guys that complain that they can't park anywhere. It's like, yeah, because
Mm-hmm.
your Ford 250, F 250 or whatever that you didn't have to bring downtown. You knew you were coming downtown. But,
Yep.
I saw this thing that was talking about how Paris is like they've done something where they have like totally like derailed the pollution aspect of the city because they blocked off just like hundreds of roads and made it pedestrian only, and they
Awesome.
actually got rid of like tens of thousands of parking spots. And now like you look at a heat map of Paris, and maybe not right now because they're having that big heat dome, but like the air pollution from cars is like if you look at a map, it's like all red in like 2007, I think, is the year they started this initiative. And now like 20 years later, it's like all green and maybe a few spots of yellow. And
That's awesome.
it's a nice reminder that some things are possible, and like urban planning and urban design is both like healthy and, makes the neighborhoods like people go to like cities in Spain and you see the cafe culture and you can walk everywhere and everyone's just out at cafes like all night and like, oh, why can't we have that here? And like so much of it literally is just all of our urban planning was around highways, cars, gas stations,
Yeah.
and then parking lots of where to park it, which is
Yeah.
a little bit of a bummer.
Yeah, totally. I'll have to check that out. I mean, I think the one like silver lining on that front that I've seen, and I'm a big proponent of, are like the city bikes. I feel like even
Right.
most small cities have those now, and like I always try to ride them wherever I go, just to like
Yeah.
let them know there's some ridership. But like I think
Yeah.
that's like a small step in the right direction, and like the system here in Portland is fantastic. I know people that never rode bikes in New York and now ride them all the time because the
Right.
city bike system is really strong there. And yeah, I think that's like one way we can inch closer to like getting more pedestrian friendly. And I hope that trend continues. But yeah, the parking lots and all of that dead space is just gnarly.
Yeah. Right. And I know like a lot of in America, it's like a lot of zoning things or like a lot of buildings have to have so many parking spots per square
Hmm.
footage or something like that. And then you look at like maps of like downtown Houston, for example, is just filled with
Oh,
parking lots. And like the entire city is basically parking lots. And like if you look at Houston, like just the metropolitan area is like half the size of the state of Connecticut. And like, there's like there's always things like Italian cities where like an entire Italian city that's famous and people go to be like tourists at like fits within the geographical range of like a highway on ramp in America, which is always like kind of depressing to think about. Yeah, just a massive like, and I've read a few books on urban planning. It's kind of like a little pet hobby of mine that every once in a while I'll check out a book. But it's interesting that like the more roads you build actually creates more traffic. You will never create a highway big enough with enough lanes where you actually stop having traffic. So it's like this weird inverse thing. And a lot of cities are kind of learning that, like, because
yeah,
a lot of downtowns in cities, they're just to get rid of the traffic. It seems counterintuitive, but get rid of the roads and then more people have to take the transit in. And then it's kind of like a
right.
snowballing thing. If it's like you can kind of generate the actions and choices of people based on how the city is actually constructed and how the roads go. And even things like, with like corners when you narrow the lanes. So all of a sudden drivers have to pay more attention as they're getting
Hmm.
into an intersection. If you just narrow the road, it naturally makes people slow down instead of like
Right.
barreling through an intersection at like 40 miles an hour in some big boulevard, which is always interesting to me. But I always think about that with like traffic because here it's always like, oh, we'll expand the highway and now we'll get rid of traffic. And then it's just even more gridlock. And now you have one extra lane for everyone to go in the left lane all the way down and cut out at the end and then back up traffic even further. It's kind of a weird
Yeah.
mathematical like equation or whatever of traffic and city planning.
Yeah, well, you're just inviting more traffic if you're giving them more space, right?
Right.
So it's like, yeah, that's never gonna solve the problem. Like that's what America is best at. It's like, oh, you gave us more to like take up, cool. We'll take up
Yeah,
that
right.
space.
Yeah. You ever
Um,
see those photos of the Chinese highways where they're like 16 lanes or something?
yeah,
Just
yeah,
insanity.
yeah, yeah.
And then
You
they'll have like
should,
some checkpoint where it like gets down to like two lanes and just the traffic that obviously creates is wild.
yeah, it's like 24-hour traffic jams and stuff. It's
Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy. You should have you ever read, I think his name is Hayden Clark, the transit guy? He's a Substacker. Um,
Oh, I don't
he
think so. I'll check
he's
him
just
out.
like all he hates all things that we're talking about. Like he hates parking lots. He
Yeah,
does like
right.
really good deep dives on just like how much space is taken up by parking lots and like how long
Yeah,
it
yeah.
takes to drive from this city to this city, and if we had like actually built a rail system, like how much more efficient
Right.
it could be. He nerds out on it and does a really good job of like explaining and really showing with really specific use cases like how much more efficient and better we could be if we had better
Right.
public transit and stopped all the surface area parking lots and stuff. Definitely recommend him.
Yeah. High speed rail is another one where that
Oh.
is like the bane of my existence that all of our high speed rail money went to like bombing Iraqis and Afghans and now Iranians. And it's like China has built more high speed rail in the last 20 years than the rest of the world combined. And now you can go to all these Chinese cities like a bullet train super fast. And it's you like there's these plan. Have you seen like the maps? There's all these like plans to build high speed rail in America, but there's
Hmm.
like a lot of stuff where it's just like the per mile cost is just higher in America than anywhere else. And we have so much like
Yep.
regulatory burden where, you have to do like a 2-year environmental impact study beforehand. And there's so many
Yep.
veto points where everything has to go to a city council. And then you get all the people who don't own the land, but have very strong opinions about what land should or should not be used for. And you got to,
Yep.
it's frustrating. And like California is a great example of that, where I think for 20 years, they spent like $30 billion. I'm just going from memory, so these aren't exact, but it's something to that effect where they spent $30 billion over the last 20 years to build high speed rail from like Fresno to Sacramento or something. And 20 years
Yes.
later, all these billions of dollars, there's not a single mile of high speed rail that you can take today, 20 years later. And it's just, oh man, it's such a
Yeah.
heartbreak.
I read that same article or something that was talking about that, and I think they talked about how, yeah, originally it was like LA to San Francisco, which like duh, that's the high speed rail
Right,
that you would
right.
want to connect those two cities,
Yeah.
and then because of all like the regulation, it ended up going like LA to Fresno or something, and it was like, but no one needs that route, and that's like
Yeah,
the
right.
route that they landed on is just bizarre. Yeah,
Well, and it's an interesting thing too, because like I'm very liberal, but like it's the liberal mindset I feel like that has kind of like hampered a lot of these changes because like when they were doing the high speed rail, they were instead of using like the spots in the cities for the first stations to make like maybe the most trafficked areas be the start of it, they had all
hmm
these rules where we have to go to these like downtrodden communities and invest there, and they have to have so many union jobs, but then there aren't any union workers there, and they basically kind of like it's like a grab bag of all the liberal ideals, but then it ends up nothing gets built. And like, there has
yeah,
to be a push and pull. And like the extreme opposite of that would be that guy, I guess, Robert Moses, right, in New York City
hmm
that created Central Park. And like he was a
yep,
bit of a dictator and obviously kicked out a lot of people. But like, somewhere in the middle, you need the government to actually do the things that they say they're going to do and spend money to do versus, you can't disenfranchise everybody in the process and just totally evict whole neighborhoods. But, somewhere in the middle, it would be nice if we had some results, right?
yeah, totally, yeah. I mean, I think the left often plays in this space where it's just like we have to please everyone or we can do
Yeah,
nothing, and it's like,
right.
well,
And then no one's happy at the end of it because you tried to please everybody, right? You got to make an
yeah,
occasional enemy if you're doing anything big and important, I guess, right?
yeah, and even those enemies will probably come to like appreciate whatever gets done. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
right.
it's a bad setup.
I always like Parks and Recreation, the show, the scenes where they would have like they would do like the board meet or what is it, the civic public meetings where like all the
Yeah.
crazy Pawnee residents come and just bitch and complain about the most random stuff. And my brother actually works for a city here in Missouri, but he actually films those meetings, and so
Oh,
like
cool.
all the time, it's basically like Parks and Rec. It's like very like not that theatrically. Heightened. But like, my brother's filming all this stuff, and they get all these people that complain about like, oh, a new road, a service road's coming here, or any change, whatever it is. You get all these people coming up complaining, and always like the council people are just like, do you own the land? No. Well, then the people who own the land are going to do this thing that they're doing, and you don't really have any rights to like stand in the way of it. And like that always cracks me up because it's like
That's
always some guy
amazing.
that like he bought a house 20 years ago and he bought that house because he didn't want all this stuff. And now the town has grown and it's infringing upon his trees or something. But again, it's
Right,
like,
right.
you don't own the land. You don't own any of those trees. So unfortunately, those trees are going to cut down and the service road is going to get put into place. But
Oh my
always
god.
cracks me up.
That's amazing. Yeah, those need to go on YouTube if they're not.
Yeah, that would be interesting. It would be a funny channel of just like the most unhinged. Just I
Yeah,
guess maybe it's a privacy thing too, but some
probably.
people deserve to be heightened, and I guess those things get filmed and get put somewhere. So I don't know. It'd be a funny beat to have some reporter just find
Yeah.
the weirdest situations like that.
Yeah, ripe
But
for public access or something, right? It'd be
yeah,
like
no,
perfect for that.
yeah, yeah. You mentioned like kind of transit and taking bikes everywhere you can. I really like the scooters. You get down with scooters when you're traveling. I like sometimes like at the end of the night when the streets are empty. I'll sometimes rack
Yeah.
up like $70 on the electric scooter charges and just be like riding, just seeing the
Yeah.
city like at a faster pace.
Yeah, I've definitely done the scooters. My friend and I did like a pretty insane like 12, 15-mile scooter ride across LA, which was like the best way I've ever seen LA, so that was fun. 'Cause it ended up being way cheaper to ride a scooter 15 miles than get in an Uber or
Oh yeah,
Lyft.
yeah,
So
and it's more
that
fun.
that yeah, way more fun. I admittedly feel more like a tourist if I'm on a scooter than if I'm on
Yeah,
a bike.
right.
I feel like there's a target on my
Yeah,
back, so, I prefer the bikes, and most of them are electric now, so you can still rip on those, which is fun.
yeah,
But yeah, I'll take anything and, yeah, try to avoid the Ubers as much as possible.
yeah. I was in Tulsa about a year ago, and that's where I had two friends I was working with, and like in Tulsa, great beer drinking or great drinking culture. They have this bar
Nice.
called Valkyrie, which is like one of the top 10 bars in some list in America, which is really cool. But like they have
Okay.
like one of like the bookshelf like ladders that they have to climb up like 7 levels of like bar shelves to get stuff.
Nice.
But not a lot to do in Tulsa, but a good drinking town if you're with a couple friends and just, bar hopping and getting a recommendation from the bartenders. What's the next place you should go to? But it's
Sweet.
interesting there. You can get I guess, a SUI, like a scooter under the influence, where like everyone was warning us, oh, yeah, they'll ticket you and arrest you. And like, I don't know. I guess, I hadn't heard of that. I don't know if every city has those rules, but maybe I guess people in Tulsa, it became a problem that they had to actually start making laws about it. But it would be funny to have to tell people that, oh, I can't travel or I'm on probation for scootering under the influence. It was hard to take it serious, I guess, when they were warning us about it.
Yeah, that would be embarrassing. And if I'm on a scooter, I'm probably intoxicated. So
Yeah. Yeah. Not many sober reasons why you'd be on an electric scooter at night, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good to know though.
Um, Cleveland was another good city with a lot of scooters that I did that. And I liked your Cleveland article because you mentioned a lot of places that just I remembered, like that. I forget that neighborhood right across the river where they have like some strip clubs, I guess, or whatever. But
Yeah,
just like a lot of cities will have those older, like old red light districts that are like if they're not like gentrified and now totally sanitized and cleaned and everything, but
yeah,
sometimes you get like real old vibes. And you mentioned that in Memphis, actually. You kind of said like Memphis as a whole is like a period piece filmed in the 50s and 60s, and it seems kind of stuck there. And then the issue
yeah,
of race is omnipresent. And yeah, I remember going to Memphis and like walking around, like it's a really beautiful river town. And they have like bluffs,
yeah.
basically, like a big park all along the river. But it is definitely a city where just like the kind of obviously the dark racial history is very prevalent in everything
Mhm.
about the city, kind of. What were
Yeah.
your impressions in Memphis on that regard?
Yeah, I mean, the Civil Rights Museum there is incredible. Like, if you're there, that's a museum that's like a must hit.
Right.
I mean, it's just so cool because it's built into the Lorraine Motel, so you can see where Martin Luther King Jr. was shot, and
Yeah.
it just adds like a whole gravity to it that's pretty impressive. But yeah, it feels like a very segregated city, and it feels just like, yeah, I don't know how to describe it other than it hasn't developed a whole lot, or it doesn't feel like it's
Yeah. Right.
developed a lot in basically my lifetime and maybe a decade or two more. And yeah, it does feel very poor. It's interesting, like FedEx is based there. So that's a huge company, and like their airport, because of all the shipping, like they have their separate like FedEx shipping and airspace
Yeah.
over there,
Like
but
a separate airport, essentially.
basically, yeah, but they, the Memphis airport is also just like brand new just because of that money. So like you come into Memphis and you're like, whoa, this is not what I expected out of like a rinky dink airport, but it's like
Right.
gorgeous, new, totally like state of the art. But the rest of the city just felt like totally trapped in time. And yeah, I mean, I loved it because it's like a beautiful downtown and some really cool bars and history. But yeah, it felt like everyone was kind of trapped in that state, and I don't know
Yeah.
how you change that.
Right.
Yeah, it's very very
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
vibe.
For real. I was like, I forget where this is coming from, but there's a quote I think about a lot where it's like, for things to change, like a lot of people have to get real cool about a lot of things real fast. Oh, I think it's actually
Yeah,
John Mulaney.
yeah,
But yeah, it's interesting when cities are like captured by that. Like Dallas, Texas is a great example where like everything around like downtown is like kind of under the cloud of Kennedy being murdered there. And obviously,
hmm
like, just off of downtown, like you can see they mark the X's in the actual road where he got shot. And
yep,
the museum, the book depository building that's been converted into a museum about it. It's a very interesting walk. And then they have like they have a kind of an ugly big monument. It's just a giant concrete thing, just these giant squares, but they're like memorials to Kennedy. And it's kind of interesting that like it's like how many decades or centuries have to go by where Dallas maybe lives that down a little bit,
Yeah, totally, yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I love getting that history and being able to, like, explore it and see it so easily, but yeah, Memphis just felt a little frozen in time, but, like, I met some of the coolest people I've met in my travels being there, and, I think Nashville gets all the love, but Nashville's kinda become like
Yeah.
Disneyland, and Memphis is, like, the real deal,
Right.
so, like, if
Yeah,
you want
yeah.
the real thing, I would say go to
Yeah.
Memphis.
Now I think you in your article, you said you didn't go to Graceland, is that right?
I did not, yeah,
Yeah.
which I don't know if that was a big miss, but just not.
No, no, I would say it's not. It's a little underwhelming because, like, it was a cool mansion back in the '70s, I guess, but by today's standard, it's like middle class looking. So, like, I don't know. It's just interesting. I didn't go in the mansion or whatever, but like, we were looking at it. There's like a big wall where I think people do art or something, like on the brick wall facade or something. But I guess it's like
Yeah,
one of those things that's like, I guess cool if you're really into Elvis, but otherwise, it's just kind of like a footnote in the city, really. But I don't know.
yeah, yeah.
I wasn't impressed by it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of out of the city too, so it looked like it was
Yeah,
gonna
yeah,
gonna
right.
take up a full day, and I just, that's not, like, my music scene, I'm not gonna, like it just was not gonna hit hard for me, so
Yeah.
I did now I'm blanking on what is the records Stax Records, or what is it in Memphis? I did do some of the music stuff, which was really cool,
Oh,
but
nice.
yeah, yeah, because you can see where Johnny Cash recorded and all these old school dudes, and that's great, but, yeah,
Yeah,
Graceland
yeah.
didn't need to do it.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, especially with, like, music because studios get that, like, storied, like, almost like a mythology around them, and, like, I think I saw a documentary, it was talking about Muscle Shoals, which I think is in, like, Alabama or Mississippi, but, like, this
Okay.
it's like a small record studio that's, like, these wood-paneled walls and just something about the sound that the walls create, but, like, everyone from, like, Aretha Franklin to the Rolling Stones, like, all these people from around the world like go there just to record at this one studio. And it's the kind of thing
Yeah.
I think like the people running it have been doing it for like 50 years at this point or something like that. And it's just
Yeah.
kind of interesting how places get that the yeah, in many ways, I guess it's kind of like ghost stories too. Like certain cities or buildings, just with like the history of them, they just have like they kind of live on long after like the instance or incident or person involved, is no longer alive or around.
Totally, totally. I mean, some of those places too, like, I think certain rooms do just have, like, amazing acoustics, and if you have those
Yeah.
amazing acoustics and some history and lore, then, like,
Right.
yeah, there's just always gonna be people coming there, right?
Yeah, it's interesting too. It's like the kind of great man theory of history in many ways of just like how many things, especially in like cities developing and growing, like how much just one person doing something created like a giant chain reaction. And like,
Yeah.
even just where cities are founded, like there's a guy on Instagram that he does he does like 2 minute or 3 minute kind of like explanations for why cities are the way or where they are. So like he goes into like, why like Dallas, Texas, for instance, is a weird city where it's like the only it's like the biggest major city that is not on a navigable river. And so like, this guy will go into like three
Interesting.
minutes worth of history of like why Dallas sprung up there. And it was basically like it was like a halfway point between like a bigger city where all the cattle herders would go to where it
Interesting.
was like just a staging ground kind of, and then it developed into a giant city. And then like, St. Louis is
Interesting.
a good example where like the Mississippi and the Missouri meet. So like a perfect place for a fort, then became a town. And then it became like the French fighting it until we got it with like the Louisiana Purchase or whatever. And, it's interesting how much geography explains why things are the way they are and where things are.
Totally.
Like along with history, I love looking at maps, and it's once you start like thinking about this stuff, it kind of makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I live 2 hours, hour and a half from Astoria, Oregon, and I wrote about Astoria, but I think, like, when there was westward expansion and they first moved to Astoria, and I think Astoria is, like, the first official city in the West, or it has
Yeah,
something weird
right.
like that, some claim to fame, but, like, I think they thought it was gonna be, like, this it's going to be the next great thing. And it's basically been a city that's never grown above like 10,000 people. And a big reason why is because it's at like the where the Columbia River empties into the Pacific, and it's basically like they call it like the graveyard of the Pacific because where
Oh,
those
really?
two converge, there's just it's like the weirdest, roughest seas, and it's taken down like hundreds of boats over the
Oh,
last
damn.
couple of
Yeah,
centuries. Yeah,
yeah.
and it's just
Right.
like it's like a death trap, and like I think they thought it was gonna be this city where this big port city, and it just can't be that because it's too rugged
Yeah,
right
right.
there. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the guy I was talking about, he talks a lot about like so many cities are where they are because of like the ocean and the rivers. And so things like
yeah,
New York City became the biggest city because once the Erie Canal got created and you could go from the Atlantic Ocean all the way up to the Great Lakes, which then go all the way to Chicago, all through like sea travel or water travel essentially. So like,
yeah,
for the first like 50 years of America, like I think it was something like 70% of all imports to the country just went through New York City, and then from there through the Great Lakes, through all those like burgeoning
yeah,
like kind of now as Rust Belt cities, and like like Pittsburgh's a great example. It's like the confluence of three rivers, and there's a lot of coal there. So
yep,
Pittsburgh became this massive, super wealthy city just because it was close proximity to coal, which then was connected to the rivers that they could export anywhere around the world. And
yep,
it's just there. America's kind of interesting. There's like America is like such a wealth of both like natural resources, but just the geography, the way you can take the Mississippi and Missouri rivers so far. Like you can go from New
yeah,
Orleans all the way up to essentially to Minneapolis. And I think Minneapolis is the point where it starts having like waterfalls or whatever, where you can't actually go any further with a boat without having to like take out the whatever you're shipping and then take it by land. But like just the amount of rivers that drain into the Missouri Mississippi like basin essentially, that's like essentially like one third or two thirds of America drains into just these two massive rivers.
yeah,
And then like with the coastline of like California and the East Coast, we have like more deep water port cities than like the rest of the world combined or something like that. We're just like we
yeah,
have this wealth of natural resources, and obviously for becoming a giant superpower, you're like being surrounded by oceans and not having to constantly fight wars for territory
yeah.
against like European and other industrial countries. It's like America. I think Americans don't really always understand just how fortunate and lucky we are that this is such a like a great continental country to live in.
Totally, totally. I mean, yeah, and again, that's why like it's so fun to explore all these different corners of it. It's so much more than I think people let on, and yeah,
Yeah.
you can go so deep and go to so many different
Right.
places, and yeah, like I mean, I don't know anything about this country still, and like I'll die not knowing most of it,
Yeah.
and like
Right.
and I'm trying to learn, and that's
Yeah.
like the
Yeah.
beauty of it. Yeah, it's such a big piece of land, and it's varied so greatly. Like, yeah, it's endless.
Yeah. Do you have any cities that you really, really love? Like, are there any places where you like have traveled to where like I could see myself moving here, living here? Any places that you want to call out for being awesome?
Um, I mean, I would say Cincinnati kind of blew my mind. I didn't expect it to be
Yeah.
as cool as it was. I loved El Paso. There aren't any cities I haven't enjoyed, honestly. I'm very happy where I live right now in Portland. I think it checks most boxes for me in a really big way. Like, I love the outdoor access, plus having like big city amenities in a kind of like neighborhoody city. It's really
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Definitely.
But I think like in the back of my head, I'm always traveling, and I'm always thinking about like where I could retire because I'm typically going to places that are a lot cheaper than living on the coast.
Yeah.
And
Right. That's why I love Missouri. Missouri is like St. Louis, I think, is the cheapest big city and the least
yeah,
crowded big city. So like I like spending my money traveling to other places because I got an acting degree in college. So all my friends moved to like Chicago, New York, and LA. And like they pay like triple the price or one third the space. And it's just
yeah.
it's a nice little thing to live in a very cheap place. But
Yeah, yeah. So I'm always like, I don't know, retirement in America is tricky. So I'm probably going to end
yeah.
up in somewhere in the Midwest is my guess, or the South. But yeah, I mean, uh, what little I saw of Milwaukee, I know I'm gonna love that when I go in a few weeks. I haven't written about Detroit, but Detroit kind of blew my mind. It's just like one of one. It's a super
Yeah.
cool place. I
And
went
that's
to
really up
school.
and coming. Like Detroit is
Yeah,
like doing a cool thing because they were like so rock bottom that they, it's basically like if anyone wants to do anything, here's a grant just to make this place a little more livable. But it created so much like creativity with people doing like gardens downtown, and
yeah,
they just revitalized that big famous train station, and now that's a beautiful kind of like
yeah,
anchor for the city.
yeah,
So props to them. They're kind of doing a lot. I mean, St. Louis is kind of like that too, where they're investing a lot more. And there's like a bunch of tech and hospital companies actually starting in St. Louis. So it's nice that like after so many decades of Rust Belt decline, a lot of these kind of down on their luck cities are kind of like bouncing back and figuring out new ways to revitalize themselves.
totally. Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely a trend. And yeah, I hope we see more of it. It seems like more people are opening up to wanting to move to these places or at least visit them and see them. And yeah, it seems like the money is flowing in. Is it Dan Gilbert? Is that who it is that's like putting a lot of the money into Detroit? It's like the
Oh,
Rocket
I'm
Morgue.
not too sure on the
Okay.
specifics. I just
Yeah.
have like a cursory view of it the few times I've been
Yeah.
there. But
Yeah, yeah. I think it's like the Rocket Mortgage guy, I think. I think he's
oh,
like
okay,
invested a
nice.
ton of money in
Yeah,
there. Which like, yeah, billionaires need to do that. So
yeah.
it's nice.
Well,
Yeah.
oh yeah. Well, it's like the Gilded Age billionaires. They would build museums and libraries, and like they would
Yeah.
actually use they were getting shit on so much. They're like, well, I'll actually give back and build some stuff. But like Elon Musk is, from what I can tell, doing nothing with his money. And I guess
Yeah.
like you get to the point now where it's like back in the day, it was like railroads and oil companies and manufacturing factories that actually had liquid cash. But now we're at this point where all the billionaires are basically playing with like fake money that's like
Right.
meme stock value that actually is not really backed by anything serious. So like I get the point that like Elon Musk doesn't literally have $1 trillion and like it would all go
Yeah.
away if the stock of Tesla went down. But also it's like they could do, I feel like, between zero and something, helping and
Yes.
building for the people, it's like you got to get back before you get like killed and eaten or something, like revolutions happen. I don't know. It's like I don't want there to be a revolution, but it's like if everyone just stockpiles all the money, it's like these things like naturally tend to pop off, right?
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yeah. The dude might not have all the liquid assets that he would need to give back, but he's got something. He's definitely got
Yeah,
something.
right.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's funny, you touched this on your St. Louis article about Purina, and like, we have that big Purina building
Yeah.
next to Busch Stadium. And it is funny, like Cincinnati is a great example. I think it's Procter and Gamble that like
Yep.
you just see their name everywhere. And like
Yeah.
Budweiser, obviously in St. Louis, like puts like finances like every charitable institution, it seems like. And
Yeah.
it's nice when you get those, but obviously now it's like everything's going digital and then like all the factories moved overseas. It's almost rare when you see a company that like actually still kind of gives a shit about like giving back to the local community. And even
Yeah.
Anheuser-Busch got bought out by like a Belgian company, I think, but at least like
Right.
they're still serious about having that community connection.
Yeah, totally. It is rare now. It's like Silicon Valley or overseas or nothing, I guess,
Yeah,
is what it
right.
seems like. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I saw this thing was talking about exactly that like if you talk to somebody in the 50s, like, how are you going to get rich? They're like, I'm going to build a factory. I'm going to do something. It's like what is it? The line in The Graduate of like the plastics of the future. You got to get into plastics. But like it used to be people were actually building like brick and mortar stores or factories that would actually employ people. But
yeah.
nowadays you ask people, how will you make your money? And they're like, I will go into finance and just make money with money, or I'll be like famous on YouTube. And it's like that difference of like the get rich quick scheme. It was like, build a factory and employ 1,000 people in your town, or just, like, I don't know, start an OnlyFans or just do crazy stunts on YouTube, or, anything digital that doesn't actually really impact other people or like make
Right.
the community better.
Yeah, and now if you do want to like open a brick and mortar place, like a restaurant or a coffee shop, you get priced out because there's some landlord that's like,
Yeah.
yeah, this isn't going to work for me.
Right.
Me, I need to squeeze you even more. So yeah, it's a bizarre state we're in.
Have you heard about the kind of like the like coffee chains are a good example of this, but there's like a almost like international style where it's like anywhere in the world you go to a coffee shop and they all kind of look the same, and like they're actually like kind of buying like their furniture at the exact same places, but like libraries will all have the same kind of look. And it's like I've seen some commentary talking about how it's like everything is so digital and like Instagram friendly and TikTok friendly now that so many places are actually all starting to look the exact same. And it's the kind of thing that like
Interesting.
anywhere you travel, and it's like, chains are obviously a great example of this, where like Starbucks kind of, they want it to look like a Starbucks wherever you go. The McDonald's, they all have like kind of brand logic to their planning and designing. But even like mom and pop shops, they're all kind of like looking the same. And it's almost like the digitalization of style, which I don't know
Yeah.
if you have any thoughts on that, but I kind of noticed that with like coffee shops, especially like bars, for
Interesting.
instance. Like right now, everything is like, let's expose the metal and pipes. Let's have,
Yeah.
like everything kind of gets the same aesthetic, kind of,
Right, right. I I think luckily I try to stay away from, I guess, the places that I go have not suffered from that,
Yeah.
which is good. I'll keep going to those places, but yeah, I mean, I definitely, that's probably part of the reason I don't like going to, like, the new trendy cocktail bar or whatever when I'm traveling, is
Yeah.
because it
Right.
does feel, I'm like, "All right, I could have done this in Portland where I live. I could have done this in New York with
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
friends." Like, that's not really
Uh-huh.
what I'm going for. I want the maybe deranged bartender or, whatever. I yeah, I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
I want something a little different
Right.
that I'm not gonna get in any other
Yeah.
city, and so
I want
gotta
someone
dig a
with
little
mental
deeper.
illness helping me. It's like, it's
Yeah.
funny when you get those like real vibes that everything is not just like Disney-fied. I think you like mentioned like kind of Disneyfication, I guess, in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I like to have a friendly bartender and barista, but sometimes it's kind of fun to have one that, like, hates you a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, right. A little disgruntled.
Yeah.
Actually, I was at a random hotel bar recently, and it was just a funny incident where like one of the bartenders was talking us up, and then like wanted to close early, and then start. It was like at a hotel at an event where everyone's coming back to the hotel wanting drinks, and this one bartender was just pissed off and decided to close like 3 hours early, and then
Oh,
it
wow.
erupted into this giant thing where like the other bartender was like going along with it, but then like the manager of the hotel was like, "Why are you closing? All these people are coming to the front desk and complaining now." And then like the bartender, like while we're just sitting there, is like obviously getting called by the manager, getting like chewed out for like closing out. And it's just,
Awesome.
it's like one of those things where if you're just like there looking around, like you just see so many interesting things and slices of life, but we're
That's
watching just like a total
fantastic.
crash out. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
that's amazing, like, yeah, that's the experience I want. Just like, yeah,
Yeah.
it's
You want real life.
yeah, go off the rails a little bit, please.
Right. And you gotta, we've been talking for a while. I had like one idea I just wanted to talk about briefly. Just, what are your thoughts on like kind of, like gentrification and with your travels? It seems to me like a two-way, like a two-sided sword where, like anywhere you kind of want to go, if it's like the down and dirty, authentic thing, people want to move in, right? And then it kind of gets that Disney-fied aspect where the rents start going up, everything's too perfect, and then they basically force out all of the lower income people that made it an exciting place. And then I think people like kind of talk about places in like Brooklyn that are like that, where now like all of the original Brooklyn character has just been bought out by like hedge fund people. And now it's just not really Brooklyn anymore. And it's like the vibe, so to speak, of like the cool place to be is always shifting because the people with money that move into any up and coming place essentially ruin it. And then people got to look elsewhere. And like, what are your thoughts on just gentrification as you travel?
Yeah, definitely. First, can you hear me okay? I had to take
Yeah,
out
yeah.
my
Oh, yeah.
headphones. Okay, because my phone's about to die. Yeah, I mean, I think gentrification is, like, the thing that's, like, impossible to solve, right? Because you want to, like, people like me who aren't rich, I still
Right.
gentrify neighborhoods wherever I go because I'm going to, like, what's affordable for me, and, raising rents on the people around me, and, like, I'm not trying to do that, but that's just, like, where I can fit, and,
Right.
so that is always, like, it's a weird thing. I think, like, what I noticed living in New York, because like, I was in a neighborhood in New York that was, I was probably, like, an early gentrifier for the neighborhood that I lived in, Prospect Heights, back in, like, 2010. You go there now, it's like a totally changed place. Um, and that's really unfortunate. I think the thing that like cities can do better is like New York kind of like, at least in that area that I was living, like just paved over everything. Like we're just tearing
Right.
down everything for the new crappy glass condo thing that's in every city now. And I think gentrification is kind of inevitable, but like certain cities like
Yeah.
don't just steamroll over everything, right? Like, and
Yeah.
so
Right.
I think there's a way where you can do it where like it is somewhat inevitable, but like you can still keep the historical places and the cool places and the community places, and there's a way to like not demolish everything. And I don't know how
Yeah. Right.
certain cities like do that successfully versus others. I'm sure it's not easy, but I think there is some sort of middle ground there.
Yeah.
And again, that's like why I like going to some of these places, like I don't know, parts of Cleveland, parts of Cincinnati, like it just felt like nothing's changed in 100 years. And like if you want to be the guy in the nice glass condo, you can do that. But like you can also go to these neighborhoods that are quote unquote cool and probably gentrifying in some fashion, but it's not this ultra fast, like everything's going to happen in 10 years and it's
Right.
going to look different. And I think anytime you can like sort of slow down that process, that's like a good thing. And again, I don't really know how that happens, why sometimes it accelerates the way it does, but I think if you can delay that process and it's a much slower climb, then I think people come to appreciate those community things that were there
Yeah.
before
Right.
them and they want to preserve them and then they actually do stay. Whereas if it's that accelerated New York Bay Area kind of thing, it just gets
Yeah.
like
Right.
run over and it's
Yeah.
no one has time to think about it. I don't know.
Well, it's interesting because it's like there's policies that you can do where like, a lot of buildings that get put up, they'll have like rules and policies where it's like 30% of the tenants have to be people that were living in the
Yep.
previous building, or like a certain number of units will be rent controlled. And then like on the higher rise, you can, have much more luxury living. And so there's ways you can actually use policy to kind of alleviate some of the people that get left behind, so to speak. But
Yep.
it's like a two-sided thing where it's a problem where if you're not upkeeping certain areas, right? Then it's basically like you're oppressing people because there's no money, there's no investment. The cities are or like the neighborhoods are getting dilapidated.
Right.
However, it's like if someone's going to come in and rebuild stuff and make it nicer, it's like obviously, the building has to charge a higher rent for a building built this year versus a building that got built in the 30s or something. And so
Right.
it's like, do you want these poor areas to stay poor because you don't want to gentrify? It's a little complicated, but I feel like
Totally.
people miss that nuance a little bit when they're all for it or all totally against it. But it's like every city, builds on top of what was already there. And like, that's why like a lot of ancient cities you go to in Europe, it's like, they'll have like underground, like several like centuries worth of street, like the old Roman streets are like 6 feet underground now. And then they
Yeah.
build buildings on top of buildings. And then the basements of those were used for the next buildings. And I don't know, it's like cities are kind of an organic, growing, always changing thing. So I don't know, it's a little bit of a, like a give and push and pull kind of thing, I guess.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it's a double-edged sword. I would say too that like, I think it's more on the city government to like figure it out and make sure that they can preserve these neighborhoods in the right ways.
Right.
But I would say at least a little of it needs to fall on like the community itself too, in the sense that like someone like me, like I've seen places in my neighborhood close, and I've been like, "Oh shit, I can't believe that closed." And then I like think about the last time I went there, and it's been like a
Yeah,
year, and I'm
right.
like,
Well, you weren't
I'm
giving them
part of the
money.
yeah, like,
Yeah.
I'm part of the problem. I haven't gone and, like, supported that in over a year, so, like,
Right.
no shit, they're closing. If I'm not doing it, other people aren't either, so, like, there is part of it that falls on us to, like, you know, keep frequenting those places and spending our money there and giving them a reason to stick around and to afford that
Right.
too high of rent, so, that's part of it, but yeah, I'll blame mostly, like, city government and billionaires.
Yeah. Typically, yeah, if there's a problem, it's like, yeah, probably a billionaire is
Yeah.
either causing it or exacerbating it. But yeah, well, we've been talking for like an hour and a half. It's been great to chat, man. We should do it again sometime. I enjoy your articles, like I said. So anyone listening right now, check out Second Rate Cities. Anything you want to plug for yourself before we go?
No, I mean,
Any
that's
shout
the
outs?
plug. I
Okay.
appreciate it. Yeah, this has been a great chat, and yeah, I appreciate it, and love Halfway Cafe, and yeah, thanks for doing this, and I'll check out more of them for sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Let me know how Milwaukee goes, and I'll be looking forward to the article because I love that city a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, yeah. You already gave me a couple good recs, so I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, good to talk to you, man. Thanks everybody for listening to Brain Milk, and we'll catch you later. See you, dude.
See you, man.
See you, everybody.